What's going on, guys? Welcome to Reporting from the Kingdom, your number one source for all Chiefs info and news. I'm your host, Bob, joined by my friend, Don, and we've got a great episode in store for you today, as free agency is soon to be underway, and it's time to prepare for the Onslaught soon to arrive. So let's get right into it. So first off, Chiefs and Andy Reid working for a new contract extension, said to make him the highest or one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL at this moment. It's going to be big for Kansas City. Kind of, what do you think about that?
Well, I think Andy certainly earned the right to be the highest paid coach in the NFL. He's won more Super Bowls and more playoff games than anyone else over the past probably 5 years. You look at the staff he's put together and how he handles his players, and you know it's unusual for a guy his age to be able to communicate and work with a lot younger people, and sometimes it's a problem. But Andy has been able to bridge that age gap extremely effectively, and I think that when you look at how he's put his staff together, it really lends itself to a three-peat possibility.
Yeah, and I think the staff is really a big thing because how that staff has been able to all stay together. You know, Colin and Merritt, those guys. I mean, there was reports that the Niners were trying to hire Spagnuolo, but they got that extension with him done quickly, and they made sure to keep that core around. And it seems like that core and they extended Colin. It seems like that core wants to stay in Kansas City, and I think in a lot of ways that does go back to the head coach. And then the salary cap up by $30 million. A lot of wasn't really expected to go up that much. I think it's going to help us with the situation we're in, with kind of the guys we're going to have to sign, the people we need, Snead, Jones, interesting situations. And it's really a big move throughout the entire league, I think. What do you kind of think about that?
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword because on one side, it gives you more money to sign players with, but it also gives everyone else more money. So I don't know how much it just kind of moves the yardsticks a little bit sometimes. Now guys want a little more money than they probably expected to ask for, so it's kind of yet to be seen. But I think if you were on the upper side of the cap or over the cap, it was probably a lot better news than if you were already significantly under the cap. So it is a big development, and I think it's going to be pretty exciting here in about, what is this, Saturday? You know, about 48 hours or so, we're going to be starting to see new contracts being agreed upon, even though they won't be signed during the tampering period. So it's going to be pretty fun to see what happens.
And it also kind of helps out people who have already signed their contracts. You know, the Chiefs made sure they locked up Mahomes early. There's some teams that still don't have their franchise quarterback, like the Dolphins with Tua. So that payday for him just gets even bigger with that salary cap going up. But the Chiefs or the Bills or the Bengals or the Chargers even, they've locked up their quarterbacks. So that pay, they'll probably get raises later on in the future, but their pay is going to remain relatively stagnant throughout the next couple of years with how the salary cap's been increasing.
It would have been nice to have gotten Chris Jones signed early last year before training camp, because certainly he's going to cost you more now than he would have then. And if that could have happened, and from what we heard, that was relatively close, but it just they never quite got on the same page, so they ended up, having a year with the playing under the tag, which was very expensive, and now you're going to follow it up with probably a contract that's going to average more per year than it would have a year ago at this time.
Yeah, and I don't know what that full dilemma was last year, whether it was Jones himself or Veach or the Katz brothers. That's what I lean towards more, but I don't really fully know the details, so it's hard to say. And then, once again, speaking back on the salary cap, MVS is out, and it's a big development. It was expected. I certainly know why they did it. He'll be remembered for his great plays he's made in Kansas City, but it was certainly a necessary move to free up that $11 million. And there's some other guys, I think, to have discussions about potentially cutting. Like, I certainly don't want to see either of these guys go, but I think there could potentially be conversations to be had about either extending or cutting or some sort of method to clear up cap with Justin Reed and Charles Omenihu. just mainly for Omenihu, mainly because of that injury. I don't know how bad that injury is, and I don't know how long that's going to sideline him for. Because if it's going to be something that sidelines him for over half the year, then that money that you're paying him this year might not be worth it.
It's a difficult situation for the Chiefs, because if you have a player who in good faith comes out and performs well, last year at the beginning of the year when he had the suspension, that was probably not something they knew it was a possibility. I don't believe they anticipated a 6-game suspension for him. But when he got back in, he was really playing at a high level and a very effective pass rusher. So they have to like what they saw. Now, saying that, when a player gets injured, it's really seems a little bit unkind to cut him because he got hurt.
Yeah.
And Omenihu is a young ascending player still. I think he's 26, something like that.
Something
He's
like
not
that.
very old. His best play is probably coming ahead. He hasn't gotten there yet. So
Yeah.
so you look at it and you go, well, we'd like to have the money. We can extend his contract, but again, if you're adding money on to the end of the contract, what if he doesn't come back and play at the same level? There's a lot of unknowns. I would probably opt, in a perfect world, to maybe extend the contract and bank on the fact that the way injuries are handled today and the rehab methods that we have, and also the Chiefs have had a pretty effective medical staff at getting people back up and playing, that I would probably look at extending him. I think that he's got some good play yet to come.
Yeah. My two hopes are either like you just said with the extension, or moving on, or what was I going to say? Either the extension or his injury's not as bad as we thought. Obviously, torn ACL, it's going to be bad, but he can make a push to play in the first quarter of the season sometime early on, which I really don't know near enough to say. And then I think for Justin Reed's case, I also would like an extension. He's recently talked about on his Twitter. Someone asked him about, when do you think, when are they going to be talking about the contract extension? And he said he'd love to have him, but that'll come when it comes. So I really think I think an extension with him would be a good idea. Some people don't like what he's done, but I think he's been great. And he's been a leader on the defense as well.
That in the mental part of the game, he's kind of been the quarterback of the defense back there on the back end. And you would like to pay less probably. You've got Brian Cook coming back off an injury that we don't know all the details of.
Yeah.
But certainly he may be 100%. He may not be. There's some unknowns there. I'm sure the Chiefs know a lot more about it than we do. But Justin's been a pretty effective player, and he's got a bit more veteran leadership to him than the younger guy. So I think I would concur that maybe trying to do some sort of a deal with him to get a bit of cap relief and also get him another year or so would be a good idea.
Yeah. And I also just want to say, kind of on the side for Justin Reed, some people don't like him because of some of the stuff he's done online with blocking people or whatever, but he's one of my favorite players. I've had a couple experiences with him in person, or just seeing what he's done in person, and he seems like a stand-up guy. It seems like he really cares about the city of Kansas City. I think he loves the city. I think he wants to be here, and I hope he stays for a while, in my opinion.
I don't think there were many happier people than Justin Reed when he left Houston and came to KC. I think that was probably the best thing that ever happened to him.
Yeah,
he got 2 Super Bowl rings actually. Yeah. So good for him.
Yeah, I was at training camp that first year, and he looked very happy to be in Kansas City. I remember thinking that this guy looks pretty happy to be away from Houston and be in Kansas City. And then we've got kind of worse news, if you want to say, with L'Jarius Sneed potentially moving on. He's been tagged, and there is a potential trade. He's been given permission to seek a trade, and I think for him, in a lot of ways, it's about kind of exploring his market, because coming in the late round, 4th round pick or whenever, he hasn't made very much money so far, and he wants to get that bag. He wants to get that payday, and I don't blame him at all.
No, I think everybody's on board with that. He's been a really good player for the Chiefs, and he's done everything the right way, and it's time for him to get paid. The problem is there's a lot of guys that need to be paid. So hats off to Brett Veach and his crew for giving a player the opportunity to say, hey, we'd love to have you, but we're going to let you go seek a trade. If you find a deal and we can match it or something, we'd love to have you. But if not, we want you to be able to get paid and for us to be able to recoup something to help make our team better in your absence. So I think it's to some degree it offers us a win-win situation, even though I'd hate to see the player go. I think he had a great contract here.
Yeah. And the one thing that you can't say about getting rid of him, which I don't want to in the slightest, but you've got all-pro Trent McDuffie, who you could either keep in the slot or move in, or let's say you move him to the outside and kind of play a guy like Tamari Connor more in that slot role. And then you've got Joshua Williams and guy who's playing on torn labrum in Jalen Watson. He revealed he's playing on torn labrum the entire season. Tough as nails, that guy.
And Nick Jones is out there, a guy we saw a little bit of. Nazi Johnson should be coming back from injury, and they were really high on him last year at training camp.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of youth and a lot of athleticism in that secondary group that I think make it easier for the Chiefs to move forward at that position group compared to the defensive line position group where we're much, much thinner.
Yeah. And then speaking of players leaving the kingdom, it's looking pretty likely, especially now with that Tranquil extension, that the Super Bowl was Willie Gay's last game as a Chief. He's kind of tweeted about some stuff on and off about that. And now they've, of course, made the extension with Tranquil. I think it's a great deal. It's looking like he's played his last game as a Chief, and they're ready to move on. He's given a great 4 years. I've loved what he's done, everything he's done. He's had some great moments, and he's brought a lot of energy that I think the defense has loved having. I think that energy, he'll be missed, but I see why they're moving on, and I'm sure he's going to go get a big payday and be great somewhere else.
Well, Willie's probably the most athletic linebacker we have, would be my opinion. Although sometimes his discipline level in the defense and playing within the parameters of the defense have it he gets off key just a little bit there, but certainly his ability to go sideline to sideline. Some of the quarterbacks the Chiefs have to try to corral, like Lamar and Josh Allen. It's really great to have that really speedy linebacker that can chase those guys down and keep the off schedule play damage to a minimum. So certainly if he does go, he'll be missed. That being said, I do believe that the Chiefs are not opposed to bringing Willie back. It probably just comes down to money and what else is out there for him. And linebacker position is really funny. And again, you mentioned Drew Tranquil. Last year, the Chargers, and we've watched the Chargers and the Chiefs play a lot of games, and I've watched them play a whole lot of games. And almost every time there was a Chiefs-Chargers games, I would watch and see Drew Tranquil and go, all that guy does is make plays. He's always around the ball. He's batting down a pass. He's making a tackle for a loss. He's just the guy always flashed. And they didn't want to pay him, and they brought in another, Eric Kendricks, I believe, who they brought in. And we were fortunate enough to land Drew. And to me, that was one of the best deals Brett Veach ever was able to swing. I think the payoff for that acquisition was huge. The guy stepped in and played every time we needed him, and was just a tremendous player for the Chiefs in 2023.
Yeah, and I think that even the new contract might even be more of a steal. I mean, they're getting him for like $3 million, $6.5 million, like $6 million, something like that.
Yeah, his cap number is $3 million in 24, $8.5 million in 25, and $7.5 million in 26. And really, it's a 2-year deal because the dead money in the third year is only $1.5 million. If they decided to move on and he'd be 31 years old at that point in time. Now, what does that look like in 3 years? Who knows?
Yeah,
but certainly you could get away from that pretty easily in year 3 without doing much damage as far as your salary cap goes.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of something Veach does really well. Is if you look at a lot of the structures of his contracts, even the bad ones, Frank Clark, the last years they could get out of it, and VS this last year they can get out of it. Tranquil, they can get out of it. Justin Reed, they can get out of it. Charles Omenihu, Well, the list goes on. He doesn't get himself trapped with contracts that he's never going to be able to get out of. And I mean, even the Bills, I guess they'll be able to get out of that Miller contract eventually, but they dug themselves in a huge hole with that. And Veach has been so good and so careful, I think, knowing the guys he has to pay money and being able to not overpay a lot of guys. And he's overpaid some, like Clark, you could say, not D Ford, but Clark, Juwan Taylor maybe. But he's been really good at that, and I think that's one of the things that makes him such a good GM, along with his late round drafting.
Yeah, sometimes it looks like Brett Veach is playing chess, and some of these other guys are.
And yeah, kind of Brett Veach talking about how he likes to play chess. There is, once again, kind of another stacked free agency class. What are some guys that you think might be the next steal of free agency for him?
Well, you've got to probably look at receiver as a position of need for the Chiefs right now.
Yeah.
Trying to upgrade the receiver room. Brett's always kind of shown a tendency to focus his efforts on younger ascending players rather than maybe the older big name star players that are going to demand more money and maybe not have as much longevity.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads you down the path of looking at guys like Darnell Mooney from the Bears or Gabe Davis from the Bills. A couple of guys that maybe we would have been interested in are unfortunately off the market already. Primarily, Mike Evans. I think everybody would have just loved to have seen that happen. It would have been really expensive, but that's no longer. He's no longer on the market. So I look for players like that.
Yeah, and I kind of think with Mooney and Davis, I kind of think they're kind of probably the two biggest boom or bust prospects out of this free agency class at receiver, because they've both shown moments of just greatness. I mean, Gabe Davis, the 4-touchdown game versus Kansas City. And Darnell Mooney, he's just been riddled with inconsistent quarterback play his entire career, but he's also had some drops. He's had some issues. So I really think they're boom or bust guys. I think with those guys, you could either get the next great star or you could get the next MVS, which is the one concern.
Mooney played for
Chicago.
Yeah, at Chicago for
Fields and whoever else they had, Trubisky.
For Matt Nagy.
Yeah,
Matt Nagy was the coach there.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank there, but anyway, so Matt Nagy's going to be very familiar with him as a player. Also, there's a lot of front office connections, with Ryan Poles and Brett Veach. These guys know each other pretty well, so you can see where the communications might not be overly difficult.
Yeah.
To obviously they're not really going to have to deal with Chicago, but certainly they can find out a lot about the player.
Yeah.
So I think that's one that interests me, and certainly with Gabe Davis, we saw too much of him in that playoff game. I didn't really want to see Gabe Davis again for a while, but if he's wearing red and gold, I'll probably be okay with that.
Yeah. Calvin
Ridley's one of the other guys that may be at the top of the chart right now as far as talent, number one type receiver. Mm-hmm. But question there is how much will he cost, and can we make that fit into the cap?
Yeah, and I really think kind of the worry with him is I saw some stat he had like 76 catches on like 130 targets. That's the one issue that we've had a lot of. I think Chiefs fans are about fed up with receivers not being at the right spot or not catching the ball. And that's not saying I don't want him, but that's just the one thing you do have to look at with him is can you fix that connection? And then two of the guys I really like in this class at receiver for different options is I think Curtis Samuel would be great in this offense. I think he fits what the Chiefs want to do, and I think he'd be a really good kind of high-end 3, low-end 2 maybe type in this offense. He provides a lot of that kind of short underneath, make a man miss mobility, I think, that the Chiefs like to have. They've shown they like to have it with guys like Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney who haven't worked out so far, but you can see all the potential in the world with them still.
Samuel hasn't had the benefit of playing with the greatest quarterbacks in the world either. So it may be that one thing we've seen over the last 2 years is that with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, you can elevate the play of receivers who look average around mere mortals playing quarterback. So that's probably in our favor also.
Yeah, and then I really like Hollywood as well. He's once again had some injuries, kind of had not the best quarterback play recently with Kyler's injuries, and since he got traded, Kyler's been dealing with some injuries, hasn't played as much. and Hollywood Brown himself has dealt with some injuries. But I think he provides something this offense has desperately missed for a while since Tyreek left, in that deep threat that can make those big explosive plays and just really take a top off the defense. They tried to do it with MVS, and that just never worked out. Really, he had some moments, but never able to get that connection going with him and Mahomes. I think Hollywood's probably maybe my favorite option in free agency. I think at receiver.
Saw him quite a bit when he was in college at OU, and he was dynamic on the field, being able to get down the field, create separation, track the football, made some just incredible catches. I believe that's what was with Kyler Murray playing quarterback in that day, but certainly that's an interesting prospect.
Yeah.
For the Chiefs, again, it comes down to can you make the dollars work?
Yeah.
Because if the Chiefs offense can get back to the point that it was, a couple of years ago, it's going to be they're going to be a tough out.
Yeah, and I think two of the more underrated, under the radar guys that could do really well in KC is one tight end Noah Fant, who hasn't looked great recently, but once again, depth chart and quarterbacks, I think put him in that system that is known for helping tight ends. Look at Kelsey, best tight end of all time potentially, and you could really have something good going on there. And then moving to the defensive side of the ball, Javon Kinlaw hasn't been incredible, but these guys I think could develop and could work in that system and could potentially be a good under the radar prospect for KC.
I believe Noah Fant was originally drafted by the Broncos, isn't that correct?
Yeah, he was drafted on.
And the Broncos were going through the series of quarterback changes and coaching changes, et cetera. And then I believe he was involved in the Russell Wilson trade to the Seahawks, and not gotten I don't believe he's gotten a whole lot of targets.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a tight end three years really to get comfortable sometimes, but he's got a lot of athleticism and could come in as a solid contributor.
Yeah, and I think obviously kind of wrapping up here, looking at some guys that Kansas City is going to look at bringing back this year. I think there's a good handful of guys they're probably going to bring back. There's probably going to be a few more maybe that I'm missing out on, or some practice squad guys. But I think there's a handful of guys they're going to try to bring back. Obviously, they've made the tag on Snead. They've made it clear from what I've heard that they want to bring back Snead. But it's going to come down to what happens, I think, probably with Jones and what his market ends up looking like. I'm sure the Chiefs are hopeful if they can't get a deal done that they get a first-round pick out of Snead. And then they obviously want to bring Jones back. Probably one of the best players on the defense. Key contributor in every Super Bowl we've won so far.
It's nice to keep your all-pro players if you can. And I think most fans would like to see Chris Jones retire as a Chief.
Yeah.
Instead of watching him go play for someone else. And certainly if he does go somewhere else, I hope it's in the NFC.
Yeah.
So we only have to see him maybe once and in a Super Bowl.
Yeah. And then those are kind of the two big names. Obviously, there's Tranquil, who's already re-signed, and then Willie Gay, who's made, I think, it probably isn't going to re-sign from what I've been seeing. Then you kind of go on to some smaller names. You've got Mike Edwards, a guy who I think really stepped up and played great in the role he was signed for, especially when Brian Cook got injured. He really came into that role and did exactly what we needed and more. Really, the only reason you'd really probably not re-sign him would be if you're going to keep Justin Reed, Brian Cook's recovering well, and then you've got Shamari Connor that give you 3 good safeties, and maybe you can draft one. That'd really be the only reason I'd consider not re-signing Edwards, but he shouldn't be too expensive, and he's going to be another good player for this team. And then I kind of think that's mainly, there's some other guys. There's Nick Allegretti, who I think wants to go get a starting job somewhere. He's won his Super Bowls. He wants to go prove he's a starter and kind of build a legacy probably. And I love him, all what he's done for us, and I don't blame him for wanting to try to go somewhere else. I could see us bringing him back, but I'm not sure it will happen with how we have to be smart with our money now. And then you've got some other guys. You've got McCole Hardman, who really probably brought potentially brought himself back with how he played in the Super Bowl. I'd say, with having that one great deep play showing he has that ability to threaten deep, which, once again, is something we've really been needing for a while. And then Derek Nottie, just with how uncertain the D-line is heading into this next year with guys like Mike Dana, who I'd once again love to bring back. But I just worry he's going to get more than we need. I worry he's going to get more than we are going to be willing to give him. Somebody might give him his payday.
I agree with that. I think that Mike Dana has been quite a find for a 5th-round pick, and will probably demand a higher salary than the Chiefs are going to be able to come up with, given the other folks they need to re-sign. Derek Nottie has been a
Solid.
adequate starter to role player, more or less, more first, second down player, not a pass rushing threat, over a number of years, and certainly he is kind of a plug and play guy that can come in and take snaps when you need those guys. Everybody can't be a star, but he's dependable. He's a guy, you know what you're getting if you re-sign him. But he's also getting older, so that's another issue there. There's a couple of guys that they have signed, I believe. Who's the guy from the Raiders? Neil Farrell.
Farrell.
Who's a mountain. He's like 330, big guy. I'd like to see what we can develop with him and see what Joe Cullen can wring out of that. And also Isaiah Buggs, the guy from Detroit that has played games in this league.
Yeah.
And, again, has good size and has some experience. And sometimes it's a matter of getting guys in the right system and the right coaching. And certainly when I look at our defensive line coach and I look at our defensive coordinator, I think it bodes well for being able to do that with guys. There's a history here of watching this coaching staff take players and make them better.
Yeah.
And that's a huge key to being a winning program year after year after year. You have to draft well, you have to coach well, you have to play well. It takes everybody working together to create a championship.
Yeah, and then you've kind of got some, I don't know if smaller names is the right word, but maybe you've got Winchester. I think there's a really high likelihood he gets re-signed. He's been a great long snapper for a while now. And then really you've kind of got some restricted free agents and stuff like that with Najee Johnson coming off that injury. I think he could be a shocking player this year. He's going to be someone to watch at training camp. You got Jody Fortson, who has shown potential. Just the main worry with him is just the consistent injuries he's faced during his career. That lack of ability to stay healthy is the one thing that worries me. Jack Cochran, he hasn't played a ton of starting snaps, but he played almost the entire game starting basically versus Green Bay. And, I mean, he didn't play incredible.
Didn't embarrass himself.
Yeah, but he played solid for being the third green dot. He played solid.
That was asking a lot.
Yeah.
Well, Cam Jones came in and had some good quality reps, and then he got hurt. So there's other young guys. He's already under contract, but these guys, again, it gets back to that. How do you develop players? And that's a key. And
then kind of one of the last main guys I think they bring back. I think this is obviously really likely with how his play's been looking and how the snaps he's been getting. Malik Herring, he's once again another guy undrafted out of Georgia, mainly because of that injury. Sat on him for a while, didn't play much the first couple of years, but he really played a solid amount this year, and he didn't do all that much, but he was solid. He was a serviceable rotational guy, which if you've got Carl Loftus and if you're able to bring back Jones and Omenahu, and let's say Uzama's able to develop more, then having an extra serviceable guy with Malik Herring could be great, and if he's already serviceable, he can even get better and kind of become that replacement for Mike Dana. I think you could potentially see happening.
For me, the 800-pound gorilla, if you will, is Chris Jones.
Yeah.
If the Chiefs are able to do a contract with Chris Jones prior to Monday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time or Central Daylight Time, I'm sorry I got off. We're gonna spring forward, but my fear is that Jones's representatives are going to push him to get to that open market, and that someone's going to jump out and overpay him to the point the Chiefs are unwilling to match that.
Yeah.
And if that domino doesn't fall into place, that's a game changer for the Chiefs offseason. It's going to look different.
Yeah.
Everything we've kind of talked about, I think, assumes that we're going to be able to do a deal with Chris Jones.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. That could change what we do with Snead, because we're not going to spend the money on Jones, and maybe we can do a deal where he doesn't cost us a fortune this first year, but we can, because he's a young player, you can push him out.
Yeah.
So that's the one that we've got to find out. And I believe I'd be surprised if by Monday afternoon to Tuesday we don't know what that looks like. I think we're going to know.
And
I was hoping we'd know by the end of today, but we haven't heard anything yet. So we're still sitting here waiting.
Yeah, and of course, and looking at it right now, the salary cap seems pretty tight with like $3 million or whatever. But I've done some digging and done some looking. There's a lot they can do to free up cap. There's a lot of restructures. There's some cutting we've already talked about they can do potentially. I think the Chiefs in this offseason can do whatever the hell they want. If they want to go sign, the best player ever, they could go sign him. It really just comes down to what they want to do.
Yeah, and this is a year maybe, that unlike a lot of franchises, the Chiefs and their management, their goal is to be competing for a Super Bowl every year.
Yeah.
Especially in Mahomes' prime, and he is in his prime. So you look at that and you go, maybe we need to be a little riskier to try to get the tools in. I mean, one, you've got an opportunity to three-peat. Never been done.
Yeah,
this is an opportunity to really set this franchise apart. So maybe you're a bit more aggressive than you normally would be. And also the fact that you've got this coaching staff that, they're not getting any younger. Andy's, 65, 66. Spags is 64.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys are getting older. They're not going to be here forever. So, maybe you've got a 3 to 5 year window where Mahomes is in his prime. Andy and the coaching staff are still in place.
Yeah.
And Travis Kelce and hopefully Chris Jones and Patrick, that core is all together.
Yeah.
So you'd like to see them maybe be a little bit more aggressive than normal and give themselves a chance to really cement themselves in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you get a three-peat, and that brings us from a really good dynasty to one of the best ever, in my opinion. I think a three-peat really helps cement the legacy of this Chiefs team, and Mahomes gets 4 Super Bowls, ties with Montana, would have the second most playoff wins ever, which is asinine. So yeah, I certainly see the reason to want to go after that three-peat and maybe push a little bit harder than you normally would to try to get that done.
That's where I think you look at maybe you would see them be a bit more aggressive toward the Jones signing, because I do think that changes this team overnight if he doesn't sign.
Yeah,
we've got a bit of a problem then as far as the defensive line goes, and we'll probably have to still spend significant dollars to try to fill that spot with a free agent, because I don't think we have guys on the roster right now that can fill those shoes at all. So and again, you're looking at the draft, and there's some good players that may be available when we pick in the bottom of the first round and second round, but they're not going to be Chris Jones.
Yeah, especially not year one.
No, they're not in year one.
And then another good thing with the contract is there's a lot they can do with Mahomes' contract. And you could probably push that down into void years for the next 20 years after he retires, and there's not going to be another Patrick Mahomes. You'll find probably there will be some more Justin Herberts and Jalen Hurts probably, but there's not going to be another Patrick Mahomes for a long time. So you better make the most of it.
I agree.
And kind of wrapping that up. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Feedback's greatly appreciated as usual. Sorry for this episode being a couple days late. There was some delays with getting a new mic in and getting people on the show. There was just a couple troubles. Next week it should be Saturday. That's what I'm aiming for. I'm not sure when this will come out. It should be Sunday or Monday when you're seeing this. But I hope y'all enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Once again, feedback appreciated. See y'all in the next one. Bye.